Welcome to Help Wanted. I'm Kris Winckler with Aztech Geothermal, and this panel is about building a geothermal installation or installer base. We have a great panel for you today. We got Kris coming up first. He's with Indiana Geothermal. We then have his wife, Dona, so we get both sides of the story. She's representing New York Geothermal Supply. And then we have Jacquie Scherer, and she's with GeoJerry Geothermal Design. And she's a very big wealth of knowledge and also is a trainer. So if you're looking for your AI, she can help you out with that as well. So to kick us off, I'll let Kris come up to the podium.
All right. So I'm not exactly sure why they thought I was an expert in this category, but I do have a lot of experience. I've been doing this for almost 35 years. I graduated trade school in '84. Immediately went to work for Tom Miller Heating at the time, who actually owns GeoFlow products now. So I was Tom Miller's second employee when he closed his heating business and started doing GeoFlow products. I actually started a company called Kyler Brothers Heating and Cooling. So I am an ICSPA accredited installer. I'm a CGD. I'm a train the trainer. I hold an Indianapolis mechanical license because we were an HVAC contractor for a long time. And then I'm also a climate master train the trainer. So I've kind of covered all aspects of this. So when we first started, I actually started probably around 1990, but by 1997, I had gotten my mechanical license and we were full-on HVAC contractor. And by 2005, we had over 65 employees going. We were doing cellulose insulation, we were doing HVAC, we were doing our own earth loop installations. We were doing about 150 geothermal systems a year. And just keep in mind, in 2005, there were no federal tax credits, there were no state tax credits, there was no utility incentives, no anything. We were doing 150 geothermal systems a year. The thing was, we had a really high turnover, which I think we're all facing with. In fact, it was so bad, we actually considered putting a revolving door on the human resources office because there was just, when people were coming in and people were going out and we were constantly training. We did have an advantage that I felt like because our office was located in a very small town outside of Indianapolis in Clayton. And so we were actually the third largest employer in what they call the Mill Creek District. I mean, the school system and the raised trash was the two larger than us, and then it was us. But there weren't a lot of jobs around to be had. So if we put a help wanted sign out in our front yard, we got applicants that came in. And these applicants that came in, they were from this farm community, so they were used to working outside for the most part. They had hobbies like hunting and fishing and riding ATVs. They were just used to doing things outside. So we had a pretty decent opportunity to bring people in that would actually fit for the job that we were doing. We also had a lot of good success. We did a lot of new construction. So we had a lot of success converting framers and framers helpers into HVAC installers. So these guys, when we went out, would do a new construction job. Usually the framers were wrapping up and leaving as the mechanical trades were rolling in. And the framers and the framers helpers, really, I think they perceived us as a step up the ladder. When they went from being a framer to being an HVAC guy, they actually moved up in the world. So really good success rate. And the nice thing about these guys was that they're already used to building things. They're already used to using power tools. They can use a claw hammer, for crying out loud. So many of these guys they've never driven a nail in their life. So very good applicants for switching over to HVAC. And so that's the way we kind of went on. In 2007, we built a new building in Indianapolis, and we actually moved our facility to Indianapolis. It was real eye-opening. Now, what I thought was going to happen was going to be a whole lot more employees because the population was higher, and we're going to have a lot of easier time getting employees. What ended up happening was that there were a lot more jobs to compete against. So there were jobs all over the place, and we had a lot harder time attracting people into our field. and these people didn't really perceive our field as being desirable. So at that point, we were doing about 900 systems a year total. So we were doing total HVAC. We do apartments and gas furnaces and heat pumps and everything. Of those, about 150 were geothermal. These applicants that we would get, their idea of working wasn't really working with their hands. Coming from Indianapolis, they were just, they weren't really the people we were looking for, like what we were getting when we were out in the countryside. A lot of these guys were showing up and their only purpose to show up for a job application was to fulfill a checkbox on their unemployment application. So they were just there, so they'd show up, you'd get them to come in for an interview, and poof, they would disappear. So in 2007, we actually sold Kyler Brothers Services, and that's when we became full-on a Climate Master distributor and an Earth Loop contractor. Now this sign, I actually took a picture of this sign. This is the gas station right around the corner from our office. Now who wants to work a night shift for $11 an hour? I can't even believe that they're actually getting employees, but the reason they are is because they're very near an apartment project within walking distance. So they are actually getting people who don't have a car or whatever, and they're actually walking over and getting a job. Now, I will tell you, we cannot get anybody for $11 an hour to work at our place.
So, was this there?
This is last week.
Oh, well, dang.
Yeah. Yeah, now the gas station across the street, they have a sign out and they're advertising $17 an hour. But no, I took this picture last week to put this presentation together. So post-COVID, the old wages before COVID don't work. I mean, it was runaway inflation. We actually, in 2022, because the cost of living was going up and people were trying to steal our employees, we across the board gave everybody a $5 an hour pay raise, just blanket. And that was about a 25% increase just to retain the employees that we actually had. When we bid our jobs, we have to make sure that we've got enough money in the jobs to pay these guys fair. Because you're not, I mean, honestly, where 10 years ago, $15 an hour, $18 an hour would have cut it, to get a good quality crew leader in Indianapolis, we've got to be $30 an hour. And I think in New York, we're probably closer to 40. So you got to make sure you got the money built into your job so you can get your employees. And then you got to take care of them. So if they don't feel like you care about them, they're not going to stay either. So, health insurance, making sure they got the time off, accommodating them when you can, because if you don't do it, they're going to go to someplace who will. So now we're Indiana Geothermal. So we sold Kyler Brothers. We kept the Loop department. We picked up Climate Master as a line of equipment to distribute, and now we're now we have to not only recruit our own employees, but now I have to recruit contractors to get them to do geothermal as well. So it was actually a lot harder than what you would think. Dealers don't like change, and the nice thing I did have here is because I was a contractor in the past, I knew how hard it was for somebody to get to see me. If someone wanted to come in and sell me a new product, be it humidifiers or whatever, I knew I didn't have the time to talk to them. Even the Pope would have had a hard time making an appointment with me, when I was running an HVAC business. So it's hard to get into these guys. You got to do something to get them off center to where they're going to be interested in doing it. I mean, you've either got to get their customers asking for the product. They've got to start losing jobs to the competition. There's got to be, in this case, there's tax and credits. When the first tax credits first rolled out, we actually had contractors coming to us saying, well, if they're going to do that, I guess I better learn how to do it. But those days are long gone. Anybody that was going to do geothermal because of the tax credits, they're not going to be doing it anymore. The utility rebates, you can get the utility companies pushing for it. In New York, obviously, you have that going on. In Indiana, we have that a little bit, but not nearly as much as what it was. Or better yet, you've got both going on. Trying to reach out to these contractors, like I said, as a contractor, somebody trying to reach me to get me to do something different was nearly impossible. So what I found is that cold calling works somewhat, just picking up the phone and calling them and see if you can get them interested in it works a little bit. What really works well is direct mail. Interesting, a lot of people don't use direct mail anymore. So, there, it used to be if you did direct mail, when your stuff showed up, there was a pile of direct mail that you're sorting through, all of it's going in the trash. Well, it's not nearly as much of that anymore. So when we send out direct mail, we only direct mail for training. We'll advertise our product on but it's training. And what you'll find, especially if we've got a free 2-hour training event that we do, and suddenly you've got the heating contractor calling us, asking us to come to their office, and now I get to spend 2 hours talking to their entire company, about the product and about us and about the whole process. So the training really is the way to get it home. And with that, that's really where we're at. That's where we're at on this. So this is all really my point of view from what I've experienced, and we got 2 other good point of views following up. So thank you.
Colors changed. Okay.
I changed them.
So here's okay. So Kris and I, while we were both invited, we did not do our PowerPoints together, so we're probably going to crisscross over a little bit of information.
This is my boss, by the way.
So my name is Dona Kyler. I'm with New York Geothermal Supply. I'm president of New York Geothermal Supply. I'm also an accredited installer through ICSPA. I sit on the ICSPA board, and I also sit on the Indiana ACA, which is the state association's HVAC. So this is a reminder to me that I only have 10 minutes to talk because my husband says I have a lot of words. So we're just going to do this really easy here, and we're going to pick 10 minutes, and we'll see how it goes. So hard lessons learned. So just to back up a little bit and how we ended up working together, which is we still say I love you every day, which is amazing, right? So I don't know that anybody wants to actually talk about 2017, but if you remember, this pesky tax credit thing went away, right? So we were expecting a little bit of a drop in business as a distributor, and we took a pretty big drop in business. And I had a job that I hated more than anything in the entire world. So I quit my job. We went to Key West, and over margaritas and key lime pie, we started what we call Arctic heating and cooling. So we were like, if the contractors aren't going to sell it anymore, then this is what we do. This is all we do is geothermal, so we're going to sell it. So we did. And so for 5 years, we did Arctic heating and cooling, and we became quickly our best customer. And then after 5 years, we sold it and went back to just Indiana Geothermal and a distributor again. But we saved our company, and we kept selling geothermal, and we did it without a tax credit that first year. We went to the home show, and we sold 24 new constructions and some residential retros without a tax credit, because you don't need a tax credit to put the most efficient system in your home. I don't ever want to do that again, ever. And any contractors, good on you. But so it does sell on its own merit. And we need the contractors to be able to sell it that way. I mean, tax credits are great, incentives are great, but the system is the best thing that you can put in, and it fits all the buckets. It's the high end, it's the most efficient, it's the clean energy, it's the save the world, it's everything. We fit all the buckets, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be selling it. So we need to sell it on its merit, so we need them to understand that, and we also need them to quote it every time, whether the customer asks for it or not. Quote it, because they don't even know what it is half the time, and they don't even know what they're missing. So quote the system. So why we're here today is the question of the day is, how do we find the contractors? How do we get them excited? How do we get them comfortable? And how do we get them to sell geothermal? Okay. So I'm going to repeat a few things Kris said. We can't get in to speak to them. They're too busy. I mean, in our company, when we were Arctic, I was the gatekeeper. You couldn't get to Kris. You could talk to me, and I might listen to you, but you could not get to Kris as the owner of the company because he's busy. His hair's on fire all the time. That's an HVAC contractor. They don't like change. They've been doing it like this forever. This is how we do business with this geothermal thing. It's I can't do that. They think mini splits are the answer to everything. because mini splits and air source heat pumps are marketing geniuses. They're not the best thing you can have. They're not the most efficient. They can't even stand where we do with geothermal. But the contractors don't know that, and their salespeople are bought in. Required training takes time. So like here, to have the clean heat programs, you have to have the XPA AI, right? You need to be an accredited installer. That takes time. They don't have time. They're too busy. They don't know where to start. Like, okay, we've heard about this geothermal thing. It's all over the place now. NYSERDA's talking about it. NY-GEO is over here, but we don't really know where to start. They don't have a loop contractor driller partner. Who do I talk to? How do I get these people? And they don't believe in it. So we have to be able to talk to these people and tell our stories and connect them where they need to go. So what works and why? So here's where we'll be talking the same language as Kris. As painful as it is, cold calling is an amazing way, but you can't just cold call. You have to cold call with an offer of something. And what do we need more than anything? Training. We need to offer training. So pick up the phone and call them and talk to them about it and offer your training. Direct mail does work. We have done really well in both states with direct mail. But again, you need a call to action. So you have training, and then you still have to pick up the phone and follow up with, hey, training. NYSERDA required XPA AI. We need to offer it more. We need to offer it everywhere, especially in New York. We need to make sure these guys have the training. Service install class. They might go through the AI, but they still need the nitty gritty about the product that they're going to be installing. So we need to offer the training. Make sure they run load calculations. This one hurts me on the inside. There's so many contractors that don't run loads on homes. They just don't. They might for new construction, but they don't for existing homes. You still got to know the home. You got to know where the windows are facing, which way is the house facing. You got to run loads. This is the only way to do this properly. So we need to teach them that. Teach them the geo designers, because they take the loads and they put them into these awesome product called geo designers, or whatever Water Furnace has or whatever Enertech has, and it tells them, here's the house, here's what size equipment, here's the size of the loop, and then there's this great report at the end that will compare, this is what geo compares to oil, this is what geo compares to gas, and then you can show the customer everything they need to know. And we need to make sure that these contractors are armed with this information. Make sure they have tech support, because you can't pick up a contractor and throw them to the wolves and say, good luck, I'm glad you like Geo now, and then not respond to their calls. So we got to make sure they have tech support. They need to understand the Clean Heat program and all the perks that go along with it. And it is quirky, and we just need to dive into it, right? Quirky is a nice word, I'm being nice. But we need to understand it so that we can help them through the processes of what they need to do here. We need to introduce them to our loop and driller contacts. We need to create the team of people so that we can make sure that they're successful, because if they're successful, then we're successful and you're successful, and everybody is really good at their job. We need to set them up for success, because the reality is they're scared of it if they've never done it before. But once they've gotten their hands on it and they've done the installs and they've seen the loops go in, they love it. And then all that fear goes away, and all of a sudden they're bought into our industry. But we also need to teach them how to sell it, because you might know how to do it, but you have to be able to talk to the customer. You need to talk to the homeowners about it. So this is a survey that I found, but 87% are concerned about the high initial cost of the system. But you don't start with the high initial cost of the system. Read the room. So you pulled up, and there's a Tesla or whatever, electric Lightning, Ford, and solar panels. I bet they're going to love geothermal. Or you pull in and there's just, you read the room, talk to them. What are your concerns? Before we even talk about cost, how long are you going to live here? What are your concerns about the existing system that you have now? And start having conversations. Don't drive it with money. 49% of them are uncertain about the performance of the system. Oh, that is easy. That is an easy conversation to have, because the performance of geothermal kicks the ass of anything else out there. So this is easy to teach them. Then I had myself, okay. Maintenance requirements. Again, it's so easy. Change your filter when you're supposed to. Condensate drain should probably be cleaned out. Every couple of years, have somebody come in and check the loop for you. That's it. That's all you need to do. Super, super easy. They're scared about the limited availability of installers. Well, that's kind of why we're here, right? Is to talk about that and bring more people into the industry. technical complexity. That's because our industry is amazing at making this as complicated as it possibly can be when we talk about it. We're professionals at it. It is not hard. It is a very simple system once you get to know it. It's simple how it works. It's simple to explain. We just need to arm our contractors with that conversation. Disruption during installation. Another thing our industry likes to do. Oh, we're going to tear up your yard. Oh my God, we got to have a drill rig drive right through here. Oh, we're going to put a ditch that's 5,000 feet long. It's very easy. It's just like, read the room. You might have a little bit of dirt stir up here. You've got a couple boreholes, or we're going to do horizontal because we're going to bring that cost down. Or you've got a pond. How deep is it? Amazing. We can use that. It's a very simple conversation that we need to have, and we just need to arm them with the information. Now, not every contractor is good at geothermal. Not every contractor should touch geothermal, and it's okay to walk away from them. I don't believe everybody should be doing it. And we know, especially as loop contractors, that not everyone should be touching it, because we get calls every day from homeowners. My loop is bad. My contractor told me to call you because there's a leak in my loop. And I'm like, they're like, it's flat. I'm like, is your system still running? Yeah. Okay, your loop's not flat. Okay, because your system would shut off. Because the great thing about geothermal systems is it's not like a gas furnace that will run until it becomes dangerous. The geothermal systems shut off. They see something, they log codes, and they stop working. So not everybody should be touching them, especially the ones that just say they do geothermal because they want to sell an air source heat pump. So it is okay to walk away from them, because these people are the death of our industry, right? What's the worst thing that can happen out there? The internet. They're out there going, oh, I hate my geothermal system because my contractor told me this. And it's just like the worst thing you've ever seen. So it's okay to walk away from contractors.
And this.
One more thing. We're going to ignore my watch now. 2017 happened and the tax credit went away, and our industry just went. But it didn't do that because we have a bad product. And it didn't do that because it isn't sellable. It did that because our industry was asleep at the wheel. We saw it coming and we did nothing about it. And then we all went, oh, when it happened, right? So we need to train people. We need to set them up for success. We need to make sure we get our teams of people together, and we need to make sure their industry is rising. Everybody knows what they're doing. So I am not hard to find, whether by my license plate or my email or my website, or find me on social media. But I can talk about geothermal all day long. I will talk to anybody. Competitors, we should be talking to each other. Contractors, we should be sharing information, because if I win, you win, the industry wins, and the homeowner wins, and the business owner wins. So I did a little over my 10 minutes, but I think we did okay. But thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Have a chat.
I'm Jacquie Scherer. I'm the owner-operator of GeoJerry, Geothermal Design and Project Management. What we do is, for 20 years, we have been primarily remote design-based, and we serve contractors who do not know how to do geothermal but wish to provide it for their customers, because if you have traditional HVAC skills, you can use that base and then add the geothermal specialty parts and serve more jobs and make more money. And the part that raises the hair on everybody's necks is when I say I also serve handy homeowners who want to DIY their geothermal system. Now, they're not really DIYing it per se. I am providing a full design and the parts of geothermal that are not obvious to them, including instruction sets, and then they take their sweat equity, or they contract out subcontractors like an electrician, and they get good working geothermal systems installed. Why do I do this? Why have we done this? Because there is a shortage of qualified geothermal contractors. And there has been more demand for good geothermal systems than the industry has been able to provide for a long time, for decades. And a good proportion of the customers we get are people who have heard from their friends about how terrible geothermal is because they got a contractor that didn't know what they were doing. but they also know a little bit about the basics of the technology. So they believe in the tech, but they don't believe in the industry to serve their needs well. So they find us, they see that we're qualified, that we have many, many pages on our website, which, by the way, if you visit it, it also needs a graphical update, but the content is there. We know geothermal, and so we are able to provide that remotely so that everybody who wants a geothermal, who is able to either subcontract or provide labor themselves, can have one, whether or not they have local qualified contractors. Now, I've said geothermal specialty contractors have been in shortage for decades, and why is that? Because geothermal doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. Everybody knows that because they know someone who has a geothermal system, and it's never worked. Never worked. Can't make it work. The loop goes flat. Anything can happen. High electric bills. The house is cold. They can't figure out anybody to fix it. Doesn't work. But here's another thing I know. Gas doesn't work. Oil doesn't work. Electric heat doesn't work. What that means is no HVAC works with guesswork. The gas systems that I'm talking about that don't work, I used to provide all the tech support along with the geothermal design for a radiant heat company. And they sold gas boilers and electric boilers. And I saw it all. I saw every way that you can possibly screw up a gas boiler installation. People who couldn't figure out what was the matter. I saw 199,000 BTU gas boiler with a 1/2-inch gas line installed. It took like 2 days to troubleshoot what was the matter because nobody thought, including me, to ask. And this was this wasn't a homeowner installing the gas line. It was a traditional HVAC contractor who put that in. It would not fire. It tried to come on and it shut down. The manufacturer, we were working with them. So what I'm saying is that if you don't know how to do something, it's not going to work, even if it's common. And what does this mean specifically for contractors when we say it doesn't work? It's not just what you might be thinking, that it doesn't heat and cool the home. For a contractor, it doesn't work means I am not reliably making money on this job. My costs are higher than I thought they were going to be, even sometimes exceeding the revenue from the product, and that is business risk. It is the business risk that drives HVAC contractors away from geothermal. It's not just that the stuff won't heat and cool the homes, it's that they are not profiting the way that they expect to. And some of the ways, common cost overruns for inexperienced or new geo contractors, there are the installation costs, so cost overruns that happen while they are putting the system in, including excavation and drilling costs when they're unfamiliar with the common local formations. You can run into high bedrock. You can run into, needing extra loop. Just any kind of excavation or drilling situations because of unfamiliarity with what you should be knowing about in your area. Some cost overruns, I hear it a lot in New York, ducting modifications that were unexpected. This can happen during or post-install where you can't get enough airflow through the geothermal because the ducting is designed for higher temperatures or it was bad to start with. Refrigerant equipment of all kinds tolerates poor ducting less than fossil fuel systems tend to. And then occasionally, because we're a growing market, there can be materials price fluctuations. That's a little bit out of the contractor's controls, but these are all things that can cause cost overruns. Then there's the post-install, which is what most people think of with geothermal doesn't work. Customer callbacks, either from the equipment not actually working correctly, poor equipment operation, uncomfortable rooms, which is typically poor design, especially earth loop or ducts, but also customer miseducation. When you have a different kind of system that needs a couple of different things, you have to educate the customer about that preemptively. Big one, setting the thermostat back. Every single geothermal contractor needs to know right up front to tell their customers, do not set your stuff back, with small exceptions. If you want to sleep a couple of degrees cooler in your bedroom at night, that's okay. If you want to set it back because you'll be away from a month, here's how much you can. Otherwise, don't do it, and here's why. If you don't do that, you're going to have cost. You're going to have a callback, almost certainly. That callback is going to cost you money as a contractor, make you mad, and say, Geo doesn't work.
Good.
You just need to tell the customer, because these customers don't know. They're used to fossil fuels. They're used to setbacks. Also, longer run times are going to happen with geothermal. This panics people if you don't tell them what's going to happen and why. And then also contract responsibility issues are another thing during installation, but sometimes post. If you are installing an earth loop, it's going to disturb the yard. Who's responsible for what? What happens if a fence needs taken down? What happens if the driveway cracks? You need to discuss all this. The salesperson should be talking about these things as a routine matter of course. If you don't, the customer may be mad, but you're going to be madder because it's going to eat up your time and cause cost overruns. And then finally, diagnostic difficulty and unfamiliarity. This can be a really big one. When the idiot lights come on the board and you have no idea why they're happening. I mean, I just got caught up by this 2 months ago, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So I tried for a little bit, and it was throwing a code that shouldn't, and in the manual for the board, because they're always getting updated, it was saying something. It's like, this is a water-to-water unit. It says air sensor. There's no airflow through this unit. What's happening? So I had to call the board guy, but I knew when to stop. I knew when my limits were reached and when to reach out for help from somebody who would know more than me to minimize my wasted time. And that keeps my costs, my time low, and keeps me doing this. I could have just kept, and wasting the customer's time as well, because I'm 500 miles away from that job and we're on the phone, and I don't want to waste their time either, because then they get frustrated, and as soon as they're frustrated, nothing's going to go well. So as soon as I went a certain distance, then I called the board guy. I had him call the board guy. The board guy got it sorted. It was sensors in the wrong coils. It was a manufacturer issue. But these things happen. It was easily corrected. We just swapped it on the board. But instead of me wasting my time and his, this is something you got to know how to do when you're putting in geo. These days, fossil fuel furnaces are a little more complicated. So people may be used to this, but some of the old school contractors, they are driven away because they say they're too fancy, and there's always something a matter in the sensors and stuff like that. So all these things discourage people from geo. So how do they avoid cost overruns? This is what contractors need to do to avoid these overruns and control their expected costs so they can reliably make money and learn to love geothermal as a business. All of us in this room are probably excited about geothermal. I know I am. And if I had 4 hours, I would keep talking about this to you guys. But most HVAC contractors are only a little bit excited about what they do. They're there to make money primarily, and they want it to be reliable and predictable and controllable. So to avoid cost overruns, they need to do things like be familiar with their typical local installation conditions that are relevant to geothermal. They're already familiar with their local installation conditions relevant to fossil fuels, meaning supply chains, etc. With geothermal, you also have to be familiar with your local soils and your geology so that you know how to create an earth loop, or you need to be familiar with the people who are going to do that for you. You need to very much understand the home and structure build HVAC needs that are relevant to geothermal. For example, a big one in the Northeast, this housing stock is older and often radiant heated, does not have ducts. Unless you're doing a new build, you're typically not going to put geothermal radiant in it. So we need to convert many of these radiant homes to forced air. You need to understand the cost of converting, or if there are existing ducts, you need to be able to examine them, see if they're sufficient for geothermal, or if they need to be upgraded to a certain extent, what will the cost of that be? Do not let these home build issues bite later and increase your costs and then make the project unprofitable. So these two things, the local conditions of the ground and the home that are specific to changing to geo, These need to be communicated and conveyed. This is a form of what they, try to think of the word, not institutional knowledge, but local knowledge that is all a part of all blue-collar work, and the geothermal part of it has to be, it used to be done during apprenticeships, where you would absorb these kinds of local quirks, local codes, things like that, while you were training up through just by exposure every day. These contractors are not getting that advantage, so these kinds of things need to be communicated to them. Understand customer expectations for geo. They're different than fossil fuels, so tighten up the contracts, make it very clear what's going to happen to the yard at the end of the contract. Educate where needed to minimize callbacks. No thermostat setback except for those tiny little bits, please. And the final thing that should be very obvious that everyone has been touching on is they need a solid foundation in the design and the installation aspects of geo that differ from traditional HVAC. This is the one that people think of when they think it doesn't work. That means the equipment won't heat or cool the home, and the contractors need to know how to design and install it. Now, that part of it is probably pretty obvious, which is why I've been hammering on the other parts of it that are less obvious, that bite them. But if you have a good customer communication, but it won't heat the house, none of that's going to do any good. So they have to know how to design it and install it so it will work along with the other things. So sure, we can talk about this. Where do they get this geo-specific knowledge? That's kind of the key. It's not enough to know what needs to happen. How is this going to get into their heads? Like I mentioned, traditional blue-collar skills are usually gained through on-the-job apprenticeships. You absorb this stuff over time. This is key, critical, profit-oriented information that is hard to get. We're competing as contractors, and people aren't just going to say, hey, you got a problem in your contract there. No, they're going to underbid and correct for that problem and get the job themselves. So there's a little bit of competition, and I'm not suggesting that contractors should just fill in, but somewhere we need to. And as an organization, NY-GEO may play a part in that. NYSERDA may play a part in that. Alternatively, experienced geothermal consultants can be retained and provide critical advice, but the cost of this is variable. Sometimes it can be expensive to do that. Now, the geothermal training, that's a big one. For the design and installation aspect of it, the IXPA accredited installer and other courses, which they're going to announce, I believe, at the dinner tonight. They're going to talk about the subdivision of AI and some new courses. IXPA and ASHRAE. ASHRAE has a commercial geothermal design manual that's quite helpful for larger projects with multiple geothermal units. The problem with those courses is while they're great, they're usually fast-paced, a lot of information, and you have the instructor for a short time. The instructor can't possibly cover every situation. I know this because I am an instructor for AI, and I try to pack it with as much as I can, but I tell people up front, here's what I will not be able to teach you. It's not covered in this course, and so ask your questions now while you got me. But what if you get a job that you didn't think of something? That instructor's not there to ask anymore. So you can hire a consultant, but if you didn't plan for that ahead of time, that's an unexpected cost. So we're back to square one. And then again, the manufacturers and the distributors, lean on them if you can. They are usually available for some guidance, but I know that they will draw lines in the sand if you try to lean on them too hard. They expect contractors to be doing their own designs for the most part. So the key is to attract more contractors to GEO. We have to provide them with better tools to help them reliably understand, control, and predict their local geothermal installation costs. They cannot just do this with the pain of experience because they will stop providing GEO. This has historically been what has happened. When they guess and just try to learn through experience, it's a disaster. And so we have to give them the tools to predict what the cost will be in a way that plays out. And then we jump over to labor. So not the contractors. Now we're going to talk about the blue-collar employees that they need to implement and build what they've designed and contracted out. So one nice thing about geothermal is that some of the labor and the skill sets are directly transferable. So you don't have to know anything about geothermal particularly per se to be a line voltage electrician that puts in the circuit for it. So if you have off the street electricians that are licensed or qualified for your area, they do not have to even know it's a geothermal. They need to know that's an electric motor, that it's a heat pump. But there are lots of heat pumps out there. So there are lots of experienced line voltage electricians that you can hire. Similar with ducting, there's only a few small things with ducting that are specific and unique to geothermal. A couple things like don't ever put a bypass in. With ceiling registers in a heating dominant area, not a great idea to use certain register types. But this is minimal kinds of things. So your electricians and your duct installers, one-to-one, they do not need any special training. You can just hire a subcontractor. You can get people that already have these skills. The manual J sizing is technically the same for geothermal as with anything else. Now, the caveat there is that most HVAC contractors are a little sloppy with their sizing in the past. For new construction, it's different, but there's lots of rules of thumb, and stand at the street and hold a thing up and see if the house fits in it and all the stuff we've heard about. So technically, if you get somebody that is skilled at manual J, they can do it whether it's geothermal or not. The load is the load before you've selected the heating and cooling system, as long as they have done an accurate load. Lots of contractors are afraid. They don't know if they know how to do an accurate load, so they add extra tonnage. And if you do that, it cripples the geothermal system. So you cannot add safety factors, which is already illegal in the manual J. It says it a whole bunch of places. No safety factors. They yell at you if you read it. So technically manual J is the same. Sizing is the same. Heavy equipment operation like excavation and drilling are technically the same skills for geo as anything else, except grouting is specific to geothermal the way that it's required to be done. HDPE installation is not necessarily known widely, but just digging the earth up and putting it back together, if you're doing horizontal runs and such, you can just get a qualified machine operator. They do not have to know that it's a geothermal system. Couple other things that are transferable. Refrigeration installation for split units is the same skill set for geothermal as for an air source heat pump. Most geothermal is a package unit, and you must be very careful. They should not put their gauges on, but if you're putting in split systems, you can just get a refrigeration contractor that knows how to install heat pumps, and they will be able to do it. And also, last thing, less common but still relevant, the radiant floor secondary mechanicals, like the floor pumps in the zoning, is the same for geothermal as for any boiler system. So all those categories, those trades are already available. So you can easily, so to speak, find people who are already trained. You don't have to give them extra training. What extra training is needed for sure? The whole earth loop design, knowing how to work with HDPE pipe, and knowing about grouting for drilling, these are specialty subsets. You do not want to assume anything. You need to get training for these things. The control wiring and programming for thermostats, aquastats, and the geothermal board set is typically specialty. If you just have a forced air geothermal and one thermostat, you can probably get away with somebody that knows how to put in an air source heat pump wiring it without getting them extra training. Otherwise, these things are specific. You really need to do it right. The programming for geothermal is quite different from air source heat pumps in the stats and other places. So this needs, if these places are where cost overruns can happen if you just get a guy and say, you know enough. You know how to, you've done some of this. Get a plumber and have him put the HDPE pipe in the trenches. No. They need to understand the geothermal specific parts. The radiant or load side primary piping equivalent setup, the mechanicals, is totally different from a boiler. So where they would typically do closely spaced tees on the primary piping, if you try that with geothermal, you're going to have a bad day.
System.
And diagnostics of nearly every kind, when those idiot lights start blinking, it is not like any other system. Geothermal, I mean, it's similar, this is all physics, but geothermal has its own sensors, it has its own builds. The manufacturers have set up, very sensitive and complex board diagnostics. So you need to know your equipment, or you need to know who does and know when to pass it off to them. And to help diagnose, contractors and diagnosticians need to learn the criticality of fluid flow at the source and load heat exchangers. So the earth loop flow and the ducting or the radiant flow is very often the problem if the equipment won't run. This is not intuitive necessarily, but this is training that needs to happen. So one way to help with, am I running over? Yeah. Okay, I got one more. One way to help with that is at least designers, crew leads, and project managers should get ICSPA AI certification or the relevant subclass for their for the new course breakdowns. The HVAC contractor themselves, if they own the company, does not necessarily have to be so, but those three positions definitely should. And the last thing, I'll go real quick, the blue collar shortages. Kris was very helpful in directly talking about the wage issue. That's a very sensitive issue to talk about. That is a huge part of why there's a blue collar shortage. The other part of it is that we raised a couple of generations of kids to go to college or they were going to fail at life. Everybody was told in my generation, you don't want to work at McDonald's, do you? Only losers don't go to college. So everybody between 20 and 40 thinks that working with your hands is a loser profession. The way to change that, they're looking for meaningful work, and geothermal can serve that need because it's it's not just like, just like plumbing or just like electrical work, which they think is less meaningful. It's a fight against climate change, etc. You can sell it that way to them, and they will be much more likely to see it as a career. And then the driller shortage, I'm out of time, but that's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, possibly, this is my opinion, but possibly with governmental assists like crew wage supports or subsidized equipment loans, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Let's open it up for some questions.
Hi, thank you very much. I actually work in central New York underneath the NY-GEO Clean Energy Hub in workforce development, so this is actually super relevant to me. And I'm specifically asking about, is there, are you guys aware of like how much the IG SHPA AI certification training, how much does that cost for either a subcontractor or someone willing to enter the industry, and what are the barriers, and like how have you tried to help either new employees or subcontractors overcome those barriers? Thank you.
I want to go and start now, but this is sorry. Yeah.
That's directly relevant. I'm in the process of setting up some courses at a couple of training centers, colleges that are getting grant money from the state to cover the cost. It's roughly $1,200 to $1,300 total for an AI course with no help, which includes all the fees, manual fees, test fee, etc., trainer fee. And, that's a lift. It's 3 days, but that's still a lift. And so the state of New York is funding some grants to help improve that, to offset those costs, which, as a trainer, of course, I think that's a great idea, but I'm also, it also helps me in my business. So but yeah, I think it definitely helps to expand the workforce. If only it's a good commercial for these people who may not have even thought about working in geothermal. But if you come to my course, you'll be so excited about geothermal by the third day, you won't even know what to do. You'll be starting your own business.
That's yes. I get one.
Yeah, and that's just a little bit to that.
He was in my course.
Okay, I can't take it out. The manufacturers and distributors also are eating some of that cost to try to make it easier for them. Sometimes it's just, if you could just pay for the books and not for the trainer, we will eat some of that too. If you look at the postcards that you might be getting in the mail, you'll see some of that. But yeah, so there's a lot of different ways, and NYSERDA has definitely got a lot of money out there they want to give people, so we need to make sure we're using it.
Please.
Eric Tarikian with Mission Geo. If you were to target a specific contractor by annual revenue, like what is a perfect fit for this type of add-on for geothermal heating and cooling? Meaning, is it 1 to 3 million a year that would want to stand up a geo consultant and then do all that work, take all the training, right? And then how much how much would you have to pay that person in addition? Do you have to hire a new person, or do you just, I'm asking 15 questions in a row, but I'm just trying to think, how do you target, how do you develop this network?
It's fun.
Go ahead and take
5.
So, is this on?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's actually, in my experience, the smaller contractors who are more interested. They're more open-minded. It's the newer guys, the newer businesses that are open to what they would consider a new product. The large companies don't really have any interest. They're just pumping out what they've always done. They're just a machine, and they don't want to stop and do anything different. So, but the smaller guys, especially someone who's owner-operator, where the owner is deeply involved in the business, where they can actually make the decision. A lot of the larger companies, the geothermal just doesn't fit their model. You know, they've got this model of sell it this morning and install it this afternoon. And the geothermal product just really doesn't fit into that model. Even if it's already an existing system that needs retroed out, you know, the difficulty of getting somebody a geothermal unit in the next day is very difficult. And so a lot of the supply chains don't allow it. You know, a lot of the manufacturers demand build. You order a unit, you get it 7 days later. So it just doesn't fit the model. So it's the smaller guys, they get excited about it. We do get some of the bigger companies that are interested, but they're open-minded about it.
The one thing I would suggest with any company is to, especially we learned the hard way owning HVAC companies, is don't be tied down to just one employee who has the certification. So if the owner is the one that gets the AI certified, that's great, because only one person in the company really has to have it. But I would recommend getting 2 or 3 people with it, because, like, you know, techs bounce, and make sure that you're not tied to just one person. You've got some flexibility in your company to make sure that you're, you know, protected.
And I'll add a little bit to that, not to contradict you on. So only one person has to have it for the rebates in New York State. But as far as, because it's not just about getting the rebate, it's about making sure that bad things don't happen on the install. Because it's unrealistic for every laborer to have AI certification, but the crew lead, whose job is to make sure that people aren't doing dumb stuff, should have some idea. You know, the AI helps them to have eyes on the ground, say, wait a minute, that's dumb, don't do it. So project managers, crew leads, and designers are what I call out, because that helps to, they'll have the familiarity with the AI class enough to be like, wait a minute, is this a typo? Did the designer really mean 2 miles of pipe? Or was it 2,000 feet of pipe? You know, stuff like that it's a really good investment in keeping your costs controlled. So.
John Thomas with Water Furnace. Just a little joke to pick on Jacquie. I don't know who Jerry is, but it seems like the company ought to be GeoJerry, maybe. Great presentation by everybody. I think one of the things we talk about at Water Furnace is, you know, we talk about the contractor, and then it's the contractor, and then there's assumptions. And the reality is all contractors are not the same. There's a wide variety, and you were all kind of pointing that out. Do you think it's, and if you talk about fossil fuel systems and talk about hydronic boiler systems, you know, that's kind of the PHCC side for the contractor organization. It's plumbers that are doing a lot of boiler work. And then you have kind of ACA, which is a lot of DX unitary contractors that flirt with doing geo work, but not that many high volume DX contractors jump all the way over to boiler work. And it depends on the geography too. Do you think it's easier? You're doing this remote, Jackie. I'll pick on you. Do you think it's easier to coach a plumber on how to install a piece of HVAC equipment than it is a pure sell, drop, run unitary contractor how to put in a loop and a tie-in?
So the hydronics aspect of earth loops is startlingly different from a radiant system, which means that it's one of those situations where it's harder to undo bad knowledge that doesn't apply to geo. It's better if they have little information, like a standard plumber that just installs domestic plumbing with 1/2 inch and 3/4 by rules of thumb usually will do a better job when being coached through an earth loop than a radiant installer will do, because the radiant installer thinks that they have to put an expansion tank and an air bleeder on the earth loop, and they don't understand why we often don't. It upsets them. It makes them not trust you. But you don't always put, you put on a well system, but on a city water system, you're not necessarily going to have an expansion tank. So they're not coming in with a hard set of rules that they're scared to death that you're telling them something new. So the less they know about that, the easier they are to coach through why we do standard things. And it's also a matter of the time taken for coaching, because sometimes you do put an expansion tank on a earth loop, but there's reasons why. And if I'm the designer, I don't always want to talk for 2 hours about why, because that's a cost overrun for me. I just want you to do what I tell you to do. Now, if you're not sure, please ask me rather than just say you don't know. So I'm going to ask you why so I can get confidence in you. But yeah, that's sort of the thing is it's kind of nice just to have gas furnace, forced air, duct people do it, because the gas part of it is so simple that they don't have any preconceived notions about the earth loop and that kind of stuff, and they will just, it's all new to them, and so they'll follow it. They'll ask a few questions. It's kind of like homeowners are actually easier to coach than contractors by far. It sounds crazy. They will do what I tell them to do, and they will ask me if something is that they don't understand on the drawings. But a contractor, I can't tell you how many times I've put in light commercial, closely spaced T interior building loop, and then they just pipe it straight across, and then they have $5,000 of specialized two-way motorized valves they have to go back and put in, because you can't do it that way or it's going to cause refrigerant migration. So that's the issue, is the less they know, actually, the better. There's a ground floor of skills that's nice, but when you know too much, you know just enough to be a problem. So either do what I say or come to it with no preconceived notions, and hopefully that answers it.
Well, that's time, but we'll sneak one more in.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
So John, I'm sure you know that, in Indiana, we're a loop contractor also. There's a huge difference between the contractors in Indiana and New York, and it's surprising. In Indiana, you're either a heating contractor or you're a plumber or electrician. There's very few that are both. In New York, almost everybody's a heating contractor and a plumber. So here, the contractors, as we're training them, they want to learn how to do their own loops. They want to do their own loops. Most of them already have an excavator. In Indiana, they don't want to touch it, which is why we are a loop contractor in Indiana. So to support our sales in Indiana, we do the loops for them to give them the peace of mind. They don't have to learn this new skill set. So it's very interesting to see the difference, similar but different,
All right, one last one. It's quick.
Hi, I'm Austin with Aztech Geothermal, and as a whole, this topic touches very closely to me. I came from a base HVAC background for 3 years, doing conventional systems, fuel oil, generators, radon mitigation, kind of a little bit of everything, and then moved my way into Geo through the state program where for 6 months they kind of comped part of my pay to help ease me into the transition. And I got to learn pretty much everything in the field. And over the last 10 years, it's changed a lot, it's developed a lot, it's grown a lot, but the workforce doesn't seem to really chase it. We seem to be bandaging it with a lot of these kind of hard and fast programs where we're trying to get as much information out to these people as possible so that they can go out into the world and kind of experience it for themselves. But is there any thought on how much of a program you would truly need to be able to release a turnkey geothermal technician out into the field? Is it a 6-month program? Is it a 2-year degree? How far do you think you would have to go to truly be successful in creating these kind of technicians?
Kris just said 30 years. I'm just going to come from the point of working with colleges and like Ivy Tech that we deal with. The colleges are really hard to get them to teach this or even get them to delve into it at all. So they're not going to get it there. I mean, the reality that I see, and there is the training, but it is a hard, fast, they have to be partnered with somebody who's going to take the walk with them, because they're just going to have to learn that way, whether it's joining a company that's geothermal only and you learn from everybody that you're with. I think it'll be really hard to get anybody to pull together a really, really good program for geothermal. It's just been an uphill battle for years, but partners are important. Driller that knows what they're doing, OEM that makes a good product, tech support that walks you through it, and then finding people who will listen, as you were saying, to what you're being told. But I think that is an uphill battle, but I love the idea of having something like that.
I can address it too.
Yeah.
So in a lot of states that have a state licensing for electrical or plumbing or mechanical, it's a 4,000 hour or 8,000 hour apprenticeship that you have to do. Those hours have to be logged, and then you take a test. That could easily, I say, be repurposed for a geothermal type of certification. So you're a trainee, you go through your hours as an apprenticeship with, I hold a electrician's license in Washington State, which does me no good here, but I went through all that. I went to the courses on Saturdays. I had to do, a certain number of hours, 24 hours or whatever, and then I had, mine was a 4,000 hour, and I had somebody supervising me on the electrical part of it. So that would be suitable for geothermal as well. It's a similar kind of skill set. Now that, pardon?
What was that again? I think 1 weeks.
Yeah, so it's the equivalent of 2 or 4 years for various types of licenses. Journeyman is usually 4 years, which is 8,000 hours of supervised work time, and then you go in and take your test, and you're a journeyman electrician as long as you pass. And so that kind of thing, as a geothermal, like a ICSPA level, full, being able to work as a journeyman, that would work very nicely for that. You could break it down into sub-disciplines, to become a geothermal designer. Probably would only take, maybe a year. 2,000 hours worth of projects would probably get you residentials, things like that. It could be done. And we have things, we already have all this modeled for us with every other trade. So it's possible now. Of course, licensing is a matter of getting states on board, but that could be an end solution to this problem for the specialty knowledge needed. And since so many of the other aspects of geothermal are already licensable and trainable, you could just get just the geothermal stuff done in maybe a year, 18 months, 2 years, a 2-year program for the geothermal rider, something like that.
All right. Well, let's hear it for our panelists.